Hello. I'm Hojo.
And I'm Hunnsy.
And welcome to this, the 17th episode of Hojo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, the safe space for old rock gumbies just like us, where Joe Elliott's invitation to us to make love like a man has been turned down in favour of a nice cup of coffee and an iced bun. It's too early in the day for that kind of behaviour, isn't it, Hunnsy?
It's far too early.
What's your favourite bun?
Bunny Carlos from Cheap Trick.
I like it. Very good. How do you make love like a man? Is there any instruction manual on this?
Hang on a minute. I'll just do my research. I'll just Google it. Oh, shit. I don't think I should.
No, you might see things that will scar you for life.
Exactly. It was an interesting song title, though, wasn't it? So,
yes, it was an interesting song title, but it was more interesting the way he delivered it. Do you remember in the song? Make love like a man.
Like a man. Yeah. I know. Bless him, sir.
Bless his cotton socks. Right, how you doing anyway? You good?
I am good. The sun is shining. I've got a spring in my step. I'm ready to record episode 17, so let's crack on.
We'll start the way we always start, because we're traditionalists like that. Tell us, Hunnsy, what's been shaking your foundations this week?
I've been listening to the 9th studio album.
It's a lot of studio albums.
It is. They'd already done 8. Okay.
Good counting. Like it.
There you go. British band. It was released in 1981.
How old were you in 1981?
I was 12, I think.
12 in 1981. Just a wee boy. And this is an album that you knew back in 1981, or is it something you've discovered post-release?
I was listening to the band in 1981.
An early adopter of this hard rock thing, weren't you?
Yeah, I had a brother who forced it down me. I didn't rush out and buy this in 1981.
Pocket money didn't stretch that far.
Later on, I did go and get it, and I've still got it now, and I still like it now.
What is that album?
The album is The Wild, the Winning and the Innocent by UFO.
Ah, fantastic. We're all big UFO fans on Hojo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House, aren't we?
Yeah, a fantastic album. I think this was the second album they did without Schenker. I think they did No Place to Run before that. Whether people had recovered from the Schenker exit. Paul Chapman was the newly installed Axeman.
Paul Tonka Chapman.
I always loved Tonka. Don't get me wrong, Schenker is God. But I loved Tonka. They could have easily got another guitarist in like Schenker in terms of style and tone. Could have just replicated. But they went for Tonka. Was he in Lone Star?
He was in a band called Lone Star. But did you know that he played in UFO with Schenker many years previously?
I never knew that.
Not on a record. He was in the touring lineup. It would be around about 73, 74. They tried it out. Wow. They were obviously old mates. They tried it out, the two of them, and for whatever reason it didn't work, and he went off. Obviously, they kept Schenker, and Tonka went off, I think, to do Lone Star. Andy Parker, the UFO drummer, told me this brilliant story about him, that when he auditioned first time around, he turned up, Tonka, and he was obviously really poor, didn't have a pot to piss in, and clearly couldn't afford a guitar case. So what he'd done was he'd screwed a handle onto the top of his actual guitar, so that when he turned up, he didn't have a guitar case, but he could carry his guitar because he'd screwed the handle to the axe itself.
Well, this sounds like going back to a previous pod where you made a Flying V guitar out of some plywood and some elastic. This sounds like the kind of thing you would do.
It is, except Tonka could play and I couldn't.
That's a fantastic story.
So they have history, those guys.
So this was Tonka's second album. It was Neil Carter's first album with the band. Paul Raymond had buggered off to join Michael Schenker Group. Now, I don't know why Paul Raymond left. All I did was, I've been doing my research. He had a, inverted commas, disagreement with Phil Mogg. That's just so open-ended. What does that mean?
I suspect it might have involved fisticuffs because Phil was a hard boy. Quite often, I think fisticuffs were involved.
So Neil Carter came in to replace Paul Raymond. Paul Raymond did keyboards and guitar. Carter had been in Wild Hojo'S, fulfilled that role, and clearly a virtuoso, flexible musician, could play to anything, came in and did a sterling job. I did read that Tonka was quoted saying that Neil Carter didn't do any of the keyboards on this album.
Well, you know what we have to do with that? I'm going to do a good old Kerlang name drop here. I'm quite pally with Neil Carter, one of the loveliest men in rock. And I think what we should do is try and get him on to find out the truth behind that story. Did he really play keyboards on The Wild, the Winning and the Innocent or not?
He was credited as playing the sax solo on Lonely Heart.
Which is brilliant. It's a really good sax solo. Sax solos in metal, there aren't too many of them, are there?
There's not enough, to be honest.
All right, you want more? More sax in metal.
Imagine Joe Elliott saying that. More sex in the metal. Okay, so the album.
Yeah, tell me what you love about it.
It's a great body of work. There's hardly a weak track on the album. There's lots of light and shade. The opening track, Chains, classic banging UFO song, good riff.
That's a really groovy little riff, that, isn't it? When it starts
really,
off.
The next two follow the same formula, a bit Long Gone, and the title track, The Wild and the Innocent. It's Killing Me, which ends side one. There's only 8 songs on the album.
Yeah. Can you imagine, though, when you've got to go to the pub as often as they did, recording 10 songs was way above their pay.
Well, here's the thing. Normally bands, they get worked bloody hard by the producers going, right, we're doing 3 tracks today. We're not leaving the studio until you do 3 tracks, blah, blah, and they're there till 4 a.m. You're going to do another take of that guitar. This one says producer, UF. They produced it themselves. So is it any wonder there's only, 8, that'll do.
And I wonder how many months it took.
Oh, God, yeah. So each side's got 4 tracks on it. Side 2's got Lonely Heart. But I think not the standout track, but a track that people always remember off this album is Profession of Violence.
Yeah, it's the album closer, isn't it?
It is, which has been featured in, I can't remember which TV show it was featured in. It might have been Stranger Things. A very melancholic piano song. Blah, blah.
Lots of strings on it, aren't there?
Loads of strings.
Yeah. And it's about the Cray twins, isn't it?
It is.
Do you want to explain who the Cray... Get your fucking teeth in, Hojo. Cray twins
Can you say Greg Trafia? See, I still can't say it.
No, the Cray twins. You better explain for the single-digit American listener exactly who the Cray twins were.
The Cray twins were sort of the UK's equivalent of, I don't know, not Al Capone, but that whole mafia. I'm going to say Tony Soprano.
Yeah, because he's a real person.
Yes, well, he is. No, the Cray twins were like gangsters in the East End of London back in the 60s and were quite violent.
But the thing about the Cray twins that everybody says was, they were lovely in the community. You could leave your door open. Nobody would come in and nick your stuff. They were lovely. They always sent flowers to your mum on her birthday and all that. Well, getting involved in some slightly nefarious activities, such as putting people in vats of boiling acid and shit like that.
Yeah, while slicing people's face off with a knife.
Yeah, that kind of
all
thing.
That sort of stuff. Anyway, so that was a song about them. When it was released in America, the title of the track was just Profession of.
Oh, what? Because they thought violence was a bit naughty?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's an interesting story. Yeah. Don't you think these days, incidentally, Phil Mogg now dresses like a Cray twin, doesn't he?
He does. Though they didn't wear a hat.
No, he's got a hat, that's true. There may be photographic evidence of the Cray twins wearing a hat, but I haven't seen it. But he done half look like a wiry old gangster now, doesn't he, Phil? Yeah. I wouldn't cross him, would you?
No. I think he might like the fact that you are saying that he looks like a wiry old gangster.
I think he'd be pleased with that. And also, you do know, don't you, in his younger days, he was involved in boxing. He had a go at boxing.
Maybe that's why Paul Raymond left after a disagreement. Yeah. Maybe it wasn't a disagreement. Maybe Paul Raymond just got his fucking head knocked off.
Yeah, lights out takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
Very good.
So just to wrap up, Wild, Willing and the Innocent is, I would say, probably the best UFO album post that first Shanker period. Would you agree with that?
I tend not to think about what happened after Making Contact because it's
too painful for you.
Let's just look at the albums that Carter played on. This was his first 1981 Wild, Willing and Innocent. Then he played on Mechanics and then he played on Making Contact. Mechanics probably the weakest out of the 3. But
yeah, I would agree with that.
But it's bookended by Wild, Willing, Innocent and Making Contact. Wild, Willing, Innocent being the best out of the 3, but Making Contact still a solid UFO album with some great, great songs on it. I think they had that period post Schenker where they were still sounding fresh, they were still sounding good, writing great songs and all that sort of stuff. And then it all went a bit wrong after that, didn't it?
Yes, it did. 1983 all went a bit wrong. Shall we draw a discreet veil over that and luxuriate in the glory that is the Wild, Willing and the Innocent?
Sadly, Tonka passed away. Was it last year?
Sad, really, because, of course, he was nicknamed Tonka because everyone said he was indestructible despite his propensity for large amounts of alcohol and drugs. Okay, I'm going back to 1973. Wow. When I was just 9 years old, so clearly I wasn't listening to this album when it was released. It's something that I've discovered since. Probably an album that you're going to think is a bit left field. You might not have even listened to it. It's Grand Funk's We're an American Band. Do you know that album?
Yes and no.
Okay, how does it work, the yes and the no?
I've listened to it. I haven't listened to it massively. When I've probably had a bit too much to drink.
So every Friday night then? And
I come home and if there's a few people in the house, the last thing I want to do is put Vardis on.
Why?
I want to keep my friends. So what I try and do, a bit pissed, get on the Spotify, let's put some music on. I don't want to reveal my love of metal.
I would have thought with strong drink that would be the first thing you'd do because all inhibitions have been shed.
Well, I do. If the people in the room are like-minded people. For instance, if you were there,
yes,
right, I'd immediately pull out the first Poison album.
Right.
And obviously my wife would just go to bed. When we've got friends back at the house and I'm trying to play it a bit cool, might put a bit of Sly and the Family Stone on. I'll go down that vibe and then maybe drop a little bit of Little Feat in there. People are going, oh, this is quite good.
Yeah.
And you go, what? You've never heard of Little Feat? Grand Funk Railroad fall into that. So I might just go, I'm going to go into We're American Band and see what people think about that.
You're just trying to steer them towards something a bit heavier.
We are seeing the early shoots of metal, aren't we?
So I've been listening to Grand Funk's We're an American Band. We're an American Band, the title track, is a great moronic rock song, isn't it?
I remember being at Monster Rock, Castle Donington. It might have been 88. I think it was when Bon Jovi headlined. I think they'd been touring for 7 years or something. They'd come straight out of Slippery into New Jersey and just toured. And I remember they were absolutely brilliant that night, but they were absolutely fucking knackered. John had a big beard. He was going through his Jim Morrison thing. But I believe at the end of their set, they got a load of people who had been on the bill to come up, and they did this mass stage. There was about 19 guitarists, 14 drummers, all that sort of stuff. The guys from Cinderella came up.
How was his leg?
He looked all right that night, actually.
He must have had the prosthetic on.
He must have.
Anyway, carry on.
For listeners who don't know, if you just come into the first episode, go back to episode 13.
All will be revealed.
So Bon Jovi and guests did a cover of We're an American Band. There is footage of it on YouTube, and obviously I knew the song.
It's a kind of an anthem, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
To use a phrase that I used regarding heavy petting back in the day, it's a stand-up shout, wave your knob about anthem. I think I was perhaps over-enthusiastic about that.
I think you were.
So back to We're an American Band. Great anthem, actually. It's a bozo anthem, isn't it? Which is also why, I'm sure you must know this, Homer Simpson from The Simpsons, they wrote that his favourite band was Grand Funk, which I think is very funny. It kind of sums up the attitude. Because you know what? They were incredibly successful. I don't think British rock fans really understand how successful Grand Funk were. They had, let's have a look at this, Grand Funk Railroad discography. Okay, so here we go. Their first album was called On Time, released in 1969, gold in America. 1969, second album, 2 albums in a year. They worked them hard. Grand Funk, platinum. 1970s, Closer to Home, 2 times platinum. Survival from 71, platinum. E Pluribus Funk, that's a great title. E Pluribus Funk.
That's brilliant.
From 1971, platinum. Phoenix, 1972, gold. We're an American Band from 1973, platinum. Shining On from 74, gold. All the Girls in the World Beware from 74, gold. What a run. People in Britain, it's not a go-to act, is it?
No.
But in America, they were massive. And of course, they kind of understood that American vibe that perhaps us Brits don't have so much. The all-in attitude to partying.
Yeah.
Lyrics to We're an American Band. We're an American Band. We're an American Band. We're coming to your town. We'll help you party down. We're an American Band.
Wow, Steve.
But I interviewed Mark Farner, who's the guitar player and vocalist from Grand Funk, and he definitely talked about a lot of pot smoking. A lot of pot smoking back in the day there. It was very much a thing in the 70s. In Rock Candy magazine, we have a feature called My First Gig.
Yes.
Where we get loads of rock stars to talk about the very first band they went to see. And all the Americans talk about, 90% of them say my first gig was Kiss. Everybody says they first saw Kiss, and everybody says, when I went into the arena, all I could realise was there was this enormous smell of pot everywhere. Grand Funk, to me, sounded like the epitome of a band that people would go and smoke pot to. Anyway, we're an American Band, obviously we know. Great song. Black Licorice is a song that I really like the title of. It's very funky. What I really like about this album is when I was listening to it, it made me realise that the early days of rock were really interesting because it was a broader church. Do you know what I mean? I know you love your AOR. I know you love your hair metal and all that, Hunnsy. But I think you'd have to agree with me that by the time those styles of rock music are coming to prominence, there's been a kind of a narrowing down that the formula is more established. And I think this is something to do with the importance of FM radio. Once it had started in America in the mid-70s, had really started to take a hold, and formatting and programming had become much more of a science. They were trying to work out exactly what it was that turned people on to listen to tracks on the radio. And then for hair metal, it was the advent of MTV in 1983, where suddenly there was a visual format that had to be adhered to. And I think that while there was a load of great music that was made, it narrowed. It's the vibe that you get from this Grand Funk album that makes it an enjoyable listen.
It was a time for more experimentation.
The formula hadn't been written, so the bands weren't being dictated to, oh, you've got to have the ballad, you've got to have the AOR song with the nice shiny keyboards. It was go in, make a record, and we'll see if we can get people to play it on the radio. It was much more freewheeling at that time, and I kind of liked that whole vibe about it. I really liked that era, 69 to 75, when each band was doing its own thing. It didn't sound like anything else. It didn't have to fit into a format. Grand Funk didn't sound like Aerosmith. Aerosmith didn't sound like Fogat. Fogat didn't sound like the early jazzy Journey. It was just a real melting pot of good music that was all played with that energy that made it part of the hard rock genre. But the bands were pulling on so many different influences, and I think that's what made it my favourite era of music.
Do you think the pot smoking had anything to do with it?
I think the pot smoking had a lot to do with the making of that music. It didn't have anything to do with my listening to it, because there wasn't a lot of pot smoking going on in Johnson world when I first started listening.
Bands like Poison would walk in and they'd just go, is there a mirror in here? I need to check my hair.
I don't think that was the only thing they were using the mirror for, to check their hair.
All right, okay. Good choice, though.
If you are a younger single-digit listener, and maybe you haven't gone back and discovered what I think is the glory era of rock from late 60s through till mid-70s, Grand Funk, check them out. We're an American band, an album that I've not listened to in a long, long time. I've revisited it, and I found the experience very edifying, Hunnsy. Now, talking about going back, the topic that I wanted to bring up to end today's show, where we always go into a little funny story or something weird that happened to one of ours. Remember long time ago, in the midst of time, in the very early days of the pod, when I talked about making a bit of a tit of myself by spilling some embers on a carpet of a sounds journalist's house when I was partying with Blackfoot and burning a hole in his carpet, and he wasn't very pleased about it. Remember that?
I do remember that, yes.
Well, I don't think I gave you the full story of my early exploits with Southern Boogie Rockers Blackfoot. So early days of writing for Kerrang. So we're talking 1982. I'm just turned 18, I think. Maybe not even. One of the very first things I got asked to do was to go on the road with Blackfoot. And Blackfoot had just started to make inroads into the UK.
Had they done that Highway Song live album?
No, the Highway Song live album was recorded during the tour where I went on the road with them for the first time.
Ah, right.
I was credited on Highway Song Live. If you've got that album, go and have a look at it. I get a credit. I started getting into Blackfoot when Strikes came out in 79 with a brilliant cover of Freeze Wishing Well. Fantastic album. That's where Highway Song was originally recorded, the studio version of Highway Song. A lot of great songs on that.
Didn't they support the Scorpions in the UK?
They did, and I saw them on that tour, 1980. And then the album that I was on the road with them for was 1981's Marauder.
That was their breakthrough album in the UK.
I think it was, yeah. Another great album, actually. Do you remember Good Morning, the opening track?
Brilliant.
And Ricky Medlock could sing his ass off at that time, couldn't he?
Yeah.
Brilliant singer. So anyway, I'm on the road with Blackfoot. I spend a few days with them out there. I'm loving the band. I'm a young kid. I'm 17 or 18 years old. These guys are much older than me. I've got the power of the pen, of course, because at that time, Kerrang is a big deal. And to be featured in Kerrang is probably the most surefire way of getting Britain's rock buying public on your side. So clearly it was in their interest to be nice to me, which they were all through that tour. And I had a great time and was introduced to snake bites. That's where I first learned about snake bites, the combination of lager and cider that basically blows your fucking head off. So I'm sure that there would be some embarrassing moments where there was an 18-year-old kid who couldn't hold his alcohol, who was probably making a fool of himself, but they were very kind to me until the night of this party. And at that party, where clearly I was a little bit squiffy, I think probably the members of the band were also a little bit squiffy, because I started talking to bassist Greg T. Walker, the cool guy who had the very long hair, looked very Native American.
Yes.
Which of course he was. Anyway, we're at this party and I've been on the road with them and I'm thinking that they're my bezzy mates and all the rest of it. And I think Greg T. Walker has obviously had too much to drink, maybe too much to smoke. And we get into a conversation and all of a sudden he starts telling me that he doesn't understand why the fuck I'm allowed to be a writer. I'm 18 years old. I don't know anything. I'm wet behind the ears. I'm a fucking idiot. Blah, blah, blah. He's turned like a viper. So he's unloaded on me at this party.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm mortified Absolutely mortified. Have you seen the film Almost Famous? It's my Almost Famous moment, because in Almost Famous, they do exactly the same thing to the journalist. They pretend that he's their best mate because they want something out of him, and then at a certain point when they're too drunk or whatever to really know what they're doing, they turn on him. And
you're the enemy, aren't you?
Yeah, you're the enemy, and they make him feel really small. That was me. And it was really heartbreaking. And I can remember crying in the corner at this party, having been told by someone I thought was my mate, and I was hero worshipping.
Is this the party where you burnt the car?
Yeah, same party.
Okay.
So obviously I leave this party with my tail between my legs. I'm absolutely distraught. Anyway, at this point in time, I haven't even moved to London. I'm still living at home with my parents in Manchester. I must have gone back to Manchester very much with my tail between my legs, crestfallen.
Crying.
Yeah, crying all the way home on the bus. Anyway, I get home and I'm not telling anybody that this has happened because it's very embarrassing and shameful and all the rest of it. And then a few days later, maybe a week or so later, 2 letters turn up. I open these letters, and one of them is from Ricky Medlock and one of them is from Jackson Spires, who's the drummer.
So they've rang Kerrang to get your home address?
I don't know. I don't know whether they've done it or they've got it through the record company, because I remember the very lovely Mary Hooton, who worked for Atlantic Records, absolutely lovely person. She was on that tour and was very kind to me. Anyway, they got my home address from somewhere. So I opened these 2 letters.
And you still got them?
No, do you know, I think they've got lost in the mist of time. I would give anything to have these letters. Anyway, I read them. Even as a very naive 18-year-old, I've kind of worked out what's going on here. Somebody has told them that Greg has unloaded on me at this party and that I was really, really upset. And I can only imagine the 2 of them have gone, what the fuck? Why have you done that? This kid absolutely loves our band. He's written loads of lovely things about us in Kerrang. And you, because you've had too much to drink or whatever, have decided to tell him he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. He doesn't know his arse from his elbow because he's just a wet behind the ears kid. If you're in that band, you're going, what the fuck have you done?
It's similar to when Noodles attacked me and they were worried about being sued.
Anyway, in these 2 letters, of course, they're not going to say, Greg has been an arsehole. We're really sorry about this.
No.
What they try and do is just do some buddying up. So both of the letters are just about, hey, Hojo, it was so great to have you on the road with us. We can't wait to see you again. It's going to be amazing. Your support is so appreciated. And it's all that. But it's done in Blackfoot style, right? And Blackfoot style means, and I apologise for the language to any listeners of a delicate disposition, but basically what it means is they start talking about having sex with women on the road. Because obviously this is different times. I think it's fairly safe to say they were having quite a lot of sex, those guys, while they were on the road.
Yeah.
And so in an attempt to be my best friend, they start going, hey, Howard, very great to see you on the road. Can't wait to get you back out again. Tell us, have you been eating a lot of pussy since we've seen you? And it's all this kind of stuff just about shagging and, frankly, oral sex and all the rest of it.
Do you think they've consulted each other?
I don't know. I daren't go into that level of conjecture. All I know is that both letters were full of these brilliant exhortations to, frankly, eat pussy and have sex and all the rest of it. And I'm 18 years old, probably still a virgin, frankly. And I'm looking at this stuff going, oh, wow, this is completely bonkers. Anyway, I remember stuffing it in a drawer in my bedroom.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets good. So I come home one day from whatever I was doing, Saturday job working at the HMV or whatever, walk in. My mum's got a face like thunder. And I'm going, oh, I don't know what this is all. She doesn't look happy. And from behind her back, she produces these 2 letters.
Oh, brilliant. Oh.
And she's going, what have you been doing? And of course, the great irony of this is I have literally been doing nothing. It would have been my heart's desire to be able to do something like that. But frankly, none of that was happening. So anyway, I'm thinking on my feet and going, this is really, really embarrassing. The whole thing is just massively embarrassing. The only thing I can do is I fight fire with fire. So I get into a right high dudgeon. How dare you take things out of my private drawer in my bedroom? How dare you? And storm off.
Brilliant.
And then, of course, these things were never spoken of again in the Johnson household.
No, until now.
Until now, where the great reveal has happened 40 years later, 42 years later.
Wow.
Unbelievable. So isn't that an incredible story?
I mean,
isn't it sad that I haven't got them?
God, if you had them, they would be in a frame for me.
They'd be in a frame, absolutely. But you know what I think probably happened is because I would have stormed off, you know, in high dudgeon about my mum having nicked these letters out of my drawer. And I suspect they were still in her hand, and I can only assume they would have gone straight in the bin. My dear, darling, innocent boy has been mixing with these foul-mouthed American rock stars.
Did that end up with her be saying that that's it, you're not going on the road anymore with these bands? Or
No, funnily enough, I was never grounded. I think that... I'll be honest, Hunnsy, relations were slightly fraught with my parents at that time. There was a little bit of leaving home and all that sort of stuff. That leads into a whole other story about the Scorpions that I'll tell you one day.
Okay, over the years since then, you must have interviewed Ricky a few times.
Spoken to Ricky many times, never mentioned it.
Never?
Next time I interview him, I owe it to the single-digit listener to mention it, don't I?
Yeah.
So there you go, Hunnsy. I think that's a pretty good story on which to wrap up today, don't you think so? We've had some good old fun there, haven't we? And I've shamed myself in front of the single-digit listener.
Magnificent.
Hey, Hunnsy, we got to go, but before we go, we have to do our usual, don't we? You have to tell everybody how they can get in touch with us, because if they want to make comments on Lettergate, how do they get in touch with us?
You can get in touch with us on Instagram, which is Hojo_and_Hunnsy. You can get in touch with us on Twitter or X. Twitter, definitely. Yeah, that's Hojo and Hunnsy. And Facebook is just Hojo and Hunnsy's Hard Rock House. Or if you are strictly old school like us, you can email us at hojoandhunsy@gmail.com.
Been a good laugh today. Take care. Same time, same place next week. What do you think?
Absolutely.
Have a great week. I'll speak to you anon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.